This is getting out of hand. 4 more Assassin's Creed games have leaked, so this on top of the many that were already announced. Yes, we're going back to a yearly release cadence for the series, but they are going to do things a bit different this time. So a lot to unpack. Of course, a like on the video would really help me out. Subscribe to be up to date on everything regarding the franchise, and let's go. Tom Anderson has been right many times before, and now he writes that Ubisoft is going all in on Assassin's Creed with 4 more games already planned. One of those is a sequel to Assassin's Creed Nexus, the VR game. There should be 16 missions in this game where we play different familiar assassins in their time period, and they think it's going to do really well, so they're already talking about a sequel, with Nexus itself planned for September this year. Of course, Assassin's Creed Mirage is the big headliner for 2023. We should see gameplay at E3, which runs from June 13th till the 16th, so probably a bit before that, and Nexus should be properly revealed here as well. Rumors still say AC Mirage is planned for August, but as said before, I can see them push it to later on in the year, and we also got Assassin's Creed Jade, the Odyssey looking mobile game, planned for before April 2024, and yeah, I'm low-key hyped for this one. Now on to one of the games that we've never heard of before. Project Raid, a free-to-play 4-player cooperative title that will be PvE. It's believed that the title's characters will be all from the Assassin's Creed universe. This should be in the works at Ubisoft Chengdu, who usually helps with many big Ubisoft titles, but the big project that they were actually in charge of was the Chinese mythology DLC for Immortals Phoenix Rising. So it seems like their next big thing is going to be this free-to-play 4-player co-op title. I'm curious if it will be more like the Unity multiplayer or more like the RPG games, so then I would compare it maybe to Ghost of Tsushima Legends. I still think it's kind of weird that Ubisoft did not make something like this already. If you're not familiar, what they did is they looked at the single player game Ghost of Tsushima and then grabbed all the things that main character Jin can do and made classes out of that you could then pick in this multiplayer game, and they could play through a 2-player story campaign or do a 4-player wave-based mode or even a raid. Maybe Project Raid might be like this. And I think this also kind of confirms that Assassin's Creed Invictus, the multiplayer game we heard about before, is probably PvP focused. The name also means unconquerable or undefeated, which fits the competitive nature of course more. And this is also being worked on by For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege veterans, so I'm sure it will be hero or character based and like have small teams that fight each other. According to Insider Gaming, this game is slated for 2025, and I will, by the way, later on in the video share a full roadmap with all the AC titles that we now know about and when they are coming, and I will also then share my take on this insane schedule that they have. Now, another game that was leaked here by Tom is from Ubisoft Sofia called Project Nebula, which means a cloud of gas and dust in outer space. And it actually lines up with the other code names that the studio is known for. Meteor was used for the Dawn of Ragnarok DLC for Valhalla. Maybe you remember the code name Comet for Assassin's Creed Rogue. That was the last standalone thing they actually worked on, because after that they helped out with the mainline titles and they also made the Curse of the Pharaohs DLC for Origins. So it seems like they're now returning to a full-on AC game that should have 3 different settings: India, the Aztec Empire, and the Mediterranean. First, really awesome. We had a ton of fan art about the Aztec Empire that all looks very promising, but they want this to have 2 other settings as well, which of course very ambitious, also because all these locations are very far away from each other. The Aztec Empire of course takes place around Mexico in the 15th century, so does this mean that the whole game takes place around that time period? If I had to bet, I think we're going to see 3 different protagonists, 1 in each area and also in different time periods, but that they are still somehow connected and tell an overarching story. It kind of reminds me of what a Ubisoft vice president of creative said a while back regarding the possibilities that the next-gen consoles will bring, that it would be able to, in the same world, have several historical periods, for instance in Assassin's Creed, and use the Animus to travel from one to the other. Again, ambitious. If they just focused on the Aztec Empire or India, I think you could make a whole game about that already, but still, they're trying something new, which is interesting. On the other hand though, it's getting a bit too much, and there's one extra Assassin's Creed title that now also got leaked called AC Echoes. This in the works at Ubisoft NC, so seems that instead of making another Steep or Riders Republic type game, they're going to do an AC title instead, which I think is a prime example of Ubisoft's new tactic to focus on its biggest brands instead of having a more diverse lineup, which did not work out for them in the last few years. Project Echoes is described as a multiplayer title that will use Ubisoft Scalar. If you're not familiar, the idea behind this technology is that it does away with the limitations of one single machine's computing power, but instead puts all of them in the cloud so they can leverage the power of an unlimited number of machines. And according to Ubisoft, this then means way bigger worlds with an unlimited amount of players, and also one that can be updated in real time without interrupting those players. It should basically do away with a lot of the limitations that we now find in game development. So does this mean that it's like an MMO Assassin's Creed game or something? This one where I'm like, do we really need this? Like, who is asking for this? So let's now look at the schedule, what it looks like with all these leaked games, and then I want to share my take on this new approach that Ubisoft has. So I already touched on 2023. 3 games unless Jade is pushed to early 2024, which is totally possible. The big one in 2024 is Codename Red, the Japanese RPG from the Odyssey makers, with insider gaming hearing from sources that the game is already in good shape. So that makes me really hopeful that they're actually going to hit that October-November 2024 window. I'm really curious. So then in 2025 we should see the launch of the multiplayer game Invictus, again likely PvP. Then in 2026 we will see the launch of Hexay, the new game from the Valhalla, Origins and Black Flag team at Ubisoft Montreal. Set in the 16th century Europe during the witch hunts, and it will be something completely different compared to what we've seen before, with French YouTuber Jonathan saying that it might be Uncharted-like, so really linear, more cinematic, but still some open spaces here and there, like we also saw in, for example, the Tomb Raider reboots. It should also have the first female-only lead in a mainline game, which I hope is true, and would of course be long overdue. So yes, the tactic with Assassin's Creed moving forward is to return to the yearly schedule, but have every game be different compared to the previous release. And you see it when I do it like this, with that Uncharted part of course being a rumor, but Hexay will at least be very different than any other AC game before it, so we at least know that. And even with big releases every year, they will keep supporting Red for probably even 3 years. So in the year that Invictus or even Hexay releases, we will still see free and paid expansions for Red as well. Okay, but then we have the 2027 and beyond section, with these 4 other games dropping somewhere after this time. Like, I do think that is getting a bit too crazy. Like, even if the gameplay or the genres for some of these titles are different, I still see them cannibalizing each other. Because if Invictus is designed like Rainbow Six Siege or For Honor, then it will be your main game, otherwise you're not competitive, meaning that you will probably play less of Red and maybe skip the DLC that they launched for that game. It of course gets even crazier if they have 3 multiplayer Assassin's Creed games going on at the same time next to support for Red. Like, I don't know if people can keep up. I think it would be way smarter if they focused on a few tentpoles and let the smaller studios work on extra content for those games instead. Like, invest even more in the post-launch plan for Red instead of trying to grab those players for a completely separate AC project. It now just feels as if Ubisoft is looking for something for these studios to work on, so they devolved to an Assassin's Creed project because the other things are not working out for them. But I think that this might end up cannibalizing the other Assassin's Creed games that they are working on. Now, there are totally pros, like having a more diverse AZ lineup does mean that they all focus on doing one thing really well instead of trying to please everyone, which never really worked out. And with more people working on Assassin's Creed, it also means that each team gets more time for their own individual projects, because there are now enough things going on to fill the void in between big releases. Still though, 10 games that are now being worked on is a bit too much, but we of course have to wait and see how it all shakes out. I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And I am, by the way, working on a video about AC Red with some extra new info and everything we know so far, so subscribe to not miss that. A like on the video would really help me out, and check out my previous video on an update we had for Syndicate, Valhalla and a new look at Mirage, and way more by clicking on the screen. I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.